Hey, Togahonk's Adventure here. Just heading out to get my son. A little bit worried because running a bit late. Usually I would already be at the spot waiting to get him. So hopefully there's still a spot at the pickup. So I'm able to get him without it being too much of a hectic trip. But I just wanted to kind of talk about taking things in small chunks, sizable chunks, like in terms of work, where I work, we have stories or a user story that we break down into sizable chunks for tasks that get completed in terms of like development and testing. And I think that should also apply to life in terms of how we tackle things. I'm a person that likes to make to-do lists and add to them. And if I get a couple of them done or more things come up, then I am making a new to-do list and moving those over to that new one. Even getting to the point where I have personal tasks and then, work tasks, and they kind of are on the same sheet and kind of working toward, getting those completed. But it can definitely be overwhelming, especially as you continue to add tasks on either side. And sometimes you may focus on the lower hanging fruit, trying to get those out of the way to try and, shorten the list of tasks that you may have. But you still may be stressed out looking at all of the tasks or seeing that there are bigger ones that you can't just simply complete. And instead of getting started on those, you kind of just, dwell on those or dread working on them. And I think it's very important to just start, even if you just need to break those down into sizable chunks. I think a good example of that was my yard. I wanted to landscape and change some things up in my yard. The front is kind of dying on one end, and then we had rock on our side lot that we don't want because we want to put a garden in there. And the other side was mulched, but I wanted to put weed barrier down, and that was an easier task for me, so I took care of that side. And then I started looking at the rock and trying to figure out how I was going to get to it in the front. And then it became this giant project, and I got very overwhelmed and didn't know how to start. It's definitely not something I can just do alone. And I just kept putting it off. And then I decided, I'm going to look into a landscaper. And reached out to a couple, didn't hear back for a while. I was a little bit worried. I was like, maybe that's not the route I want to go. And then I did hear back from the landscaper, and then it just added more, overwhelmingness for me. Do I reach out to them? Do I want to do this when I have other tasks and things that my brain is, trying to focus on? And yeah, work was pretty hectic yesterday, but I eventually did decide, I'm going to reach out. I'll get back to them. And they were available yesterday, and they came out and they looked at the yard, took some measurements, and they'll have a quote for me later this week. But that allowed that to get off my plate for the time being. I don't have to worry about that project, at least for what I need them to do. So that'll be nice, and that allowed my brain to then shift towards other tasks that I could focus on. And some of the stuff that I'm looking into, even for like work, are these proof of concepts. I actually have 2 that are due at the same time, which is a bit chaotic in some ways. Researching how we can implement AI into things, and then also research implementing visual testing so that it can look at an image and then compare it to something on our website and make sure that it's getting the same image. And things like that. These are things that I'm not familiar with and new, and they require research and time to try and figure out. And if them both do at the same time, it makes it a bit tricky. Although last week I found out that one of the options we wanted to go with for the AI testing tools wasn't compatible, so we were kind of back at the square one. And I researched it a little bit, but the new tool that we decided we may go with, we didn't get confirmation on it yet, so I didn't want to invest too much time into that either, because if I look into all this stuff and then we don't go that route at all after I find out in the meeting today, then that was wasted time that I could have been spending on looking into the visual stuff. So today I decided to focus on the visual stuff. And I've kind of broken it down, just getting it installed, making sure that it can do its basic functions, and then from there I'm going to expand and then try and have it do something simple with comparing images. And once it's able to do that, then I may be fine with that proof of concept for a bit, until I look to, make it a little bit more flashy in terms of what, it can do for me. But then that'll allow me to shift some focus back to the AI testing tools, and I've broken that down as well in terms of, it's got a bunch of functionality and capabilities, but I've broken those out into each thing that I want to try. Can it import data that we can use for testing? Can it use AI prompts to write a test for me? How does it do it just writing tests in general? And then also it has a record feature, so how well does it do with recording the steps that I'm doing on a web browser and turning that into an automated test with code? So those are things that I've kind of broken out for it. Now, of course, I'm going to keep these tests very simple. I do think of edge casing and, what would it do in this scenario and that scenario, but I have to keep in mind that with a proof of concept, we're just kind of testing and seeing how well it does initially. You should always have concerns of products, and then, those can be brought up later. And if we have time, we can test and try those things out, but they're definitely not, needed initially. So it's something that I've really been trying to keep in mind. But I think those are, really important things, whether it comes to life or even with work, in terms of just, don't feel too overwhelmed, especially with tasks. If they can be broken down, definitely break them down into sizable chunks where you're able to complete them, because that'll help you move on. The hardest step is just taking the first step right and actually doing it, and not feeling so stressed or overwhelmed with just trying to begin in the first place. So that's really helped me just get started, and hopefully that'll help others, whether it's something you're doing personally or professionally. But that's gonna do it for this video. I got very lucky. I got the last spot before getting stuck into the kind of pickup, so very happy with that. But yeah, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you in the next video.